Walk 21 is been around since the year 2000, when it started as an idea at a conference in London. And it was the first conference that talked only about walking. And from that humble beginnings, the conference series has grown over the years. We are celebrating our 21st conference this year. And we've expanded the work that we do into beyond the conference, into doing projects and promoting walking globally and working with communities around the world, both in the North and the South. My expertise, I'm actually a sociologist, and I come to Walk 21 from the perspective of wanting to make the world a better place for people on foot. So I worked a long time in transport agenda, but when I met up with walking, it brought society and transport together in a way that really made sense to me, and I've invested my career in it for the last 20 years. Walking is the magic. It's the magic medicine that we need as people for our physical health, for our mental health, for our spiritual health. It really does make a fundamental difference to how we are as people. I mean, it is who we are as people. We walk, we interact with people, we look after our bodies. And so the personal benefits of walking are very immediate and measurable for everybody. The other interesting thing for the personal benefit is that connection with your local community. So if you're out and about on foot, the opportunities to meet with other people, interact, have casual conversations, especially in the last little while with COVID, it enables us to have social distance conversations. So walking really is a magic medicine in that respect. For our cities, walking is also the magic medicine for the vibrancy of our cities. It's where we seek out in our cities is where people are gathering, where people are walking, where we can interact. But it's not just on an emotional level that walking is great for our cities. Walking is fundamental to our transport systems. It makes it all run efficiently. It supports it financially, and it's the glue that holds it all together, as they say. And it helps the economic vibrancy of our cities with our local communities and local shops, the transport systems, and the local economies around as well. When we are confined to our local neighborhoods or to our homes with very small amounts of time that we are allowed out, it is walking that has kept people able to leave home and spend time in the outdoors, access to local shops. And we have seen an extraordinary awareness about walking, an increase in levels of walking during the lockdown, but also the research is now showing that walking levels are sustaining beyond the lifting of lockdown restrictions. And so where we are actually accommodating walking more positively, more constructively, where we are enabling people to choose to walk with safer environments, then we are seeing that cities are retaining the levels, and people are choosing to continue to walking after the lockdown restrictions have lifted. The research is very clear about the cities where there is the most walking and what generates that. And proximity to destinations is clearly one of them, because very often people will say to you, oh, but you can't walk all these long distances. Walking can only be for these things. But walking is critical for those shorter journeys. But we have built it out of the equations for our cities. So we need proximity. And it doesn't have to be to everything, but it does need to be proximity to local services, to schools, to shops, but also then to public transport opportunities and shared mobility opportunities so that you can make longer journeys. You need good connections and quality routes to those destinations as well. Another successful factor for a walking city is safe, connected streets. And in fact, the UN resolution last year identified more people walking and cycling in good, safe infrastructure makes the city safer for everybody. So if we build quality streets and environments that people can choose to walk and enable young people and old people to actively access their communities, then these cities will encourage people to walk more. An interesting thing I would like to point out, though, is that this is a very European, very northern perspective, because in many cities, people walk because they don't have any choice, whatever the conditions. And so we should respect the fact that they're walking and reward them for it with good facilities. But certainly they will choose not to walk if they get an opportunity. So it's critical that we make the best environment and make it the most attractive option for people for short journeys. So walking in many places is not a safe, comfortable experience. Many cities and towns where people have no choice but to walk, they still have to travel through environments where motorized traffic, which is generally faster and more dangerous, is traveling as well. And it's the lack of balance between these two things. So where you actually can manage traffic, manage down the speed of traffic, you can still have traffic in the environment, but you reduce the danger that it represents to people walking. And people think that if they stop walking, if they get into cars or they find some other way, then that's going to make it safer for them. But actually, if we build an environment, it's called the safe systems approach. If we create an environment where it's safe to walk, where we give people the priority to walk, and manage down the speed of vehicles, the access that vehicles have, and create safe space and time for people to cross, then the volume of people is less important than the behavior of motor vehicles in that space and the nature of the infrastructure that we build. A walkable city can be all over the city and not just in dedicated town centres or waterfronts and parklands and things like this. So when you think about cities perhaps like Paris adopting a 15-minute city approach, that says that everybody across the city should live within a 15-minute walk of what they need and the available services. Lisbon is another really interesting city where, just, once again, they have some urban fabric that is great for walking, but they are making consistent and significant changes all the way across the city to ensure that the pedestrian experience is more positive and more enabling for everybody, particularly for people with a disability, to access their city. Rotterdam is a particular winner for me in the European context at the moment, not just because we had our Walk 21 conference there, but because they have made a very clear commitment to make it better for people walking. They've developed clear strategies and investment plans for actually implementing that. And it's very easy in the Netherlands to think that, well, there's all these bicycles, it therefore must be okay for walking, but actually the bicycles impact on people's walking experience as well. And we need to make sure that we're finding a balance in those spaces. And I'd like to just finish to suggest also the city of Berlin has recently passed a law around improving the pedestrian environment. Now, from our perspective, we'll be watching that with interest. Will the law make a significant difference, or is it just a lever for change? And in some cities, when you have political commitment and investment and a strategy, you get that investment in the walking and the walkability. You don't need a legal framework. But if for Berlin, that's what makes a difference, we'll watch with interest to see the changes that it makes. But you need some good public transport infrastructure and some really fantastic walkable streets around that infrastructure for the whole city to benefit from becoming more walkable. People often ask, is it the administration and the politicians who are holding back the people walking, or are people just not wanting to walk? Is there suppressed demand in our cities? And is it carrot, chicken and egg? If we build it, will they come? Walking has declined over the last few years. People are choosing other modes. The way we move and live in our cities, the need for commutes and the style of development around shopping centres has all changed the way that we move, and changing levels of road safety have impacted on parents' decisions to allow their children to walk to school. So there's a lot of factors at play as to whether people want to walk more. There's lots of reasons why the environment has created a context in which they the other options, the driving out of fear or convenience has overridden that. But what we do find is almost every time you create the context within which people can access a space by walking, I think COVID has shown the retention of new walking levels post-COVID has also illustrated that people do want to have those opportunities within their local neighbourhoods. And as the world evolves after COVID into more working from home, we must make our local environments more attractive for people to walk so that we can balance out the demands of a home office with access to their local neighbourhood. So I think it's really clear that decision makers, politicians and administrations, they need to lead on this because they can fulfill policy ambitions for themselves by investing in the walkable community. They can underpin the fiscal viability of their transport systems. You need customers on public transport, COVID aside. So you can invest in that commuter catchments for those public transport. Our health systems need people to walk more and to move more, so they can invest in enabling those environments to happen. But at the same time, we have to then invite people to remember what it's like to walk. So it's interesting when cities choose to invest in walking because, quite frankly, they can't afford not to invest. If you want to run a vibrant, livable city where the transport systems meet the needs without massive investment in alienating road infrastructure, then city decision makers have to choose other ways. We're looking at a crunch coming here, not just for all the reasons that we talk around environmental benefits and climate and health. We can list all of those things, but the bottom line is if you're running a transport system, it will be better if more people are walking. Capacity issues, people always talk about congestion, but if people walk more and cycle more, then we can see that mode shift to address some of these transport challenges in our cities. But how do you invite people to then make those different choices? And it has to be a mixture of things. So if you have a city where there is already a good urban fabric, but maybe too much motor vehicle movement, then you have to take away that motor vehicle movement and invite people to come back and experience walking. I know when Copenhagen did this 30 years ago, maybe even 40 years ago now, when they took out the first car parking and invited people to occupy the public space, nobody knew what to do in it. They didn't know how to spend the time. They had a summer to work it out, and by the end of the summer, they said, we don't want to give it back, and people have to learn into those spaces. And I know in Ljubljana, when they took the buses away out of 3 bridges, people that didn't initially know that they could walk all over the space. I remember hearing this story and I absolutely loved this, that there was this sense that you had to still walk on the side. We need time to adjust as humans, so it has to be both. You can't ask people to walk if it's horrible and if it's unsafe. It's just unreasonable to do so. But at the same time, once you've created somewhere attractive for them to come to, or you've created safe routes, then you do need to enable that and invite them. They talk about activating public space. You need to activate walking more. So if you want children to walk to school, make the routes safe and then activate the idea with students. One of the critical factors is at the end of the day, we can't have everything. We can't have free vehicle movement and expect people to enjoy walking beside big crowded highways or in the polluted, noisy environments. We have to make choices about how we use our public space. So making it nicer for people to walk will require choices about how we allocate space in our cities. And we have to make those choices. We have to choose what matters more. And when you look at a single person or even 2 people in an enormous motor vehicle, the consumption of space, for no other reason, the consumption of space, the pollution, the danger that represents in the space, you have to make choices about whether that's the priority, especially around schools, for example, outside shops, and all those sorts of things.